developing a sprayable antenna that we can either use as an antenna as a paint or a silkscreen process or any other way to make a flat, low-profile, conformal, paintable antenna. So during our research and experimentation and development, we've come up with, this is our little connector we use to connect to, once we've sprayed like a dipole or a T, the upside down T, simulated ground plane antenna. We have the, just a simple, it's not even a matching network, it's just the center and the shield. The center pin goes to one side and the coax goes to one center conductor, and then the shield's on the other side. So it's just, it basically lays on top of the painted structure. And it's a capacitive type coupling. We can, if we were to paint on a piece of plexiglass, for example, like this one, we can either lay that on top of the paint, or we can actually put it on the back side of the plexiglass, and it will capacitively couple across, like through the glass type operation there. All right. So here's one of our first experiments. You can kind of see a little stripe there on the tree, one there and one there. And in the middle, what we did, we just used some simple EKG tabs like the doctor sticks on your chest. And I'll pull this up, I guess. And we stuck them just right there and right there. Used a couple alligator clips, split a coax in half, right? And run it to a little radio right there. Over here you can kind of see there's a wire dipole kind of going down over there on the other side. That was measured against the dipole to our paintable antenna, a field, a group, I can't tell you who, anyway, measured it at 15 dB better than that dipole. And so we go, wow, that's pretty cool. And then we decided, well, could it be the tree? Because for sure our material can't be that good. So the next day we went out again and we painted a different tree. And they measured it pretty much the same results. We painted a rock. We painted fabric. We painted a tent. We painted thousands of different things with very similar results as we go along. So this is an action shot. That's my action shot there. So off to the side here, we had a vehicle. We had a Cessna flying at 600 feet in New Hampshire. The vehicle with its normal antennas would lose the plane at 7 miles. I painted the stripe on the tree. We were able to talk to them 14 miles, and they finally had to turn around because they're out over the ocean, and the little pilot doesn't have the rights to fly over the water. This is, we just had painted the stuff on a piece of masking tape and hooked it up there. I can't remember what the what the performance was there. This is a small version of that we've just been testing over the last couple weeks here. So basically, we took my partner, KF7 VLT on the dock here. I'm out in a Zodiac. We took 2 regular antennas, insulated them so they're not in the water, put a plastic bag over them so they stay dry. And we stuck them on some 20-foot poles. And we headed out to sea. First I said, well, let's see if it even works by feet. And it worked. So at 25 feet, we were able to have FM voice communications. We're just using a couple of 817s, the Gesus. At 100 feet, we could kind of determine, we could hear the squelch kind of quiet as we'd key one. So on the shore, we pulled the whip antenna out, and we only had one of these made that day. We dropped that in on the shore. We're on a big long dock, a pier or whatever, so we were able to go down about 30 feet. So we're down 30 feet, and I'm heading off out to the middle of the ocean. So I made it out there about 1.1 miles. We were operating at 50 megahertz and 3 watts. When we'd pull the antennas back up out of the water, we couldn't communicate. When we'd stick them back in the ocean, we could communicate. So that's a similar result. We've been testing last week, a couple of days. We made some smaller one here and a medium-sized one. We had like 3 different sizes, and our goal this time was just to determine what frequency bands we could use depending on the shape and the size of our little antenna here. So we were able to successfully communicate around 50 feet deep for a half a mile was all we were separated this time. At 10 meters, we just did 30 megs. I don't think there's any rules underwater, right? So, so we did 30, 50, 140, and 440 or something like that, right? Yeah, 440, 140, 50, and 30, which is still our same Newly Yaesu FT817s. And we were able to do that. We needed and we basically tested from the bottom, pulled them all the way up into the air, and then we'd drop them back down as we changed the different frequencies. We were going to go for a distance, but after a few hours I was done puking, so I had enough. So we called the test done.
This is a different antenna for each band?
No, this one right here actually used all 4 bands, and we had a medium-sized one and a bigger one. We had like 4 different sizes. We're just trying to see the effectiveness. I think we would they all successfully worked fine at a half a mile. I think we might have had to change the shapes if we were going for a distance, the sizes, for the optimum coupling. Here's a little test. They had the walkie-talkie there at 48 megs with the big long whip. We had him walk out with 5 watts as far as he could go. Painted a little piece of masking tape, stuck it on his arm. He was able to switch down to a half a watt and actually walk further. This is another test where we just painted a piece of masking tape. We had it on a soldier all underneath his kit with his body armor and everything on top of it. And he first used the backpack radio with the big long whip antenna. He made it 1.7 clicks, switched the cable over to our antenna underneath his clothing there, and was able to talk 4.5 clicks. This is kind of fun for you guys who are looking for a stealth way to do HF. This is it's a hunk of concrete. It's a septic tank cover, and I basically painted from here all the way around the perimeter and left a gap there, a little bit of a gap. We had another group that had HF radio, 20-watt man-pack radio. We stuck an EKG tab right there. The radio's just off the picture here. And we ran 3 megahertz to 30 megahertz ALE voice and data. That's one of the stations down in Nevada. We're in Florida. That's a Nevada test site. We linked up with them all up and down the coast, ships at sea. We were talking just fine. We've successfully used from 1 megahertz to 30 megahertz on a 10-foot piece of duct tape painted. So we just painted, like, strung a piece of duct tape there, paint it, hook up, and we're ready to go. So basically that long right there for a 160-meter antenna. This is a little satellite antenna. Basically, the Army military uses satellites. It's geosynchronous. We were able to communicate with that piece of paper. Little dog collar. This is an undercover police car in Salt Lake. We have our little sticker on the inside of the glass. A little piece of paint painted outside. Put a piece of like signed vinyl over top of it. It's been going for a year and a half. Little UAV nose cone. Basically, the thing's at 1,000 feet, not bothering anybody. It lands. I changed the antenna, and we're jamming another UAV 4 miles away. So, this is there's a piece of duct tape there on the side we have painted. Give them an AB switch. When they'd switch to our antenna, they could communicate 200 miles further. This is a weather balloon, little module there. With the regular, I've just applied a piece of masking tape with our material, just painted on it, just stuck it on a piece of wire. Basically, at 50,000 feet normally, the signal is really low. They can't get their data. I stuck that on there, had them fill the balloon as full as it could go. It went almost 79,000 something feet before it popped. We still had a gigantic signal off of that thing. There's a boat. We've stuck it on the dash there, made a little simulated ground plane T on the window, replacing that big 22-foot long VHF antenna. Went 3.5 times farther. This is really fun. It was an experiment where this company was trying to read an active RFID tag. It was 200 milliwatts, about as big as a deck of cards with 4 batteries. Day one, they could read it at 240 feet. That afternoon, they broke it. And this is all they had left was a little 1 milliwatt tag here. It had a little baby watch battery on the back side of it. What we've done is I just sprayed on a piece of sticker, masking tape again, and I just overlaid over top of their circuit board dipole they had there. Before I did that, it could go 5 feet. After, they could read it at 700 feet from the air. So that's a little bit about what we do. And all these examples here is what we're calling it is what we've created is the wireless antenna because we have no wire in our antenna. It's actually so thin it's invisible when it goes through an X-ray machine. It's very light. So if you can imagine an array of millions and millions of capacitors. So if we took sand and threw it across this floor here, and some of the particles are conductive, some are non-conductive, some are semiconductive, and we mix those with some dielectric material, and they're all, some are touching, some are not, most are not. They're all different random distances apart. So what we have is an array of millions, maybe billions, depending on how big we paint it, of different value capacitors. And so as the RF energy goes running down this tape, it always has, what we believe, this is, we've still got to prove this scientifically, we're still trying to figure it out, but our imagination is, what we believe we have is we always have a discharge capacitor for the signal to jump to. So we're operating in the first time constant of all those little capacitors, because they can charge and discharge so fast, and they're in parallel and they're in series and they're all random, that the signal can just find a path. And so it's sort of like a superconductor. Now, when we look at with a FLIR camera, a thermal imaging camera, we look at a regular wire, we transmit with 10 watts, and we can watch that wire heat up. When we transmit with our tape, it doesn't heat up. The little coax going up to it, it's hot, but as soon as it hits the antenna, it's not. It stays at room temperature or ambient. So we basically let the energy free. If the wire got hot, all the energy didn't leave. So if we can raise the temperature of a wire 20 or 30 degrees, sometimes so hot it'll burn you if you let go, we didn't let the energy off. Now, with when we use our antenna, so say we're driving through a big city and we're listening to the NOAA weather, and we got the picket fencing going on, the multipath. When we switch over to our antenna, that basically almost goes away, because on a regular wire we have the in-phase and out-of-phase signal trying to live on that same wire, and so it's fighting each other. On ours, as the in-phase signal is coming down and the out-of-phase signal, let's say, is going up, once the voltage is, if we got 2 volts and minus 2 volts, it just like turns off. The capacitors won't charge, and so it just sort of like the antenna gets longer and shorter, but it doesn't actually counteract the signal. And so the picket fencing is greatly reduced. When we run data, we can run at a much, if we're running like PSK31, we can operate maybe 15 dB lower off of our signal generator than when we use copper antennas. We have a 6.5 mile antenna range where we test. We've actually, bought the diamonds and some other antennas so we have something with a spec, right? And with our little signal generator, it'll go about maybe a mile, 2 miles. We can go, and so the commercial antennas won't even make the 6.5 miles with the signal generator. So we have a nice 1-inch wide copper tape antenna that will barely make it to 6.5 miles. Otherwise, we'd go farther. And when we switch to our pane antenna on the transmit side, we can usually lower down 9 dB. If we switch to the pane antenna on both sides, we can lower it down an additional 6 dB. So we can go about 15 dB less, and we're just sitting there streaming text and just watching for errors, in the data stream. So when it starts making typos, we know we're at the threshold. So we're experimenting, and it's real. Why we're here is because we got invited to come because a bunch of people say it's not real, it can't work. So I'm here to just let you know it is real, it does work. We're working on some products for the amateur world here, since we're all hams. Our first products will probably be just a sleeve, like a piece of heat shrink or something with our product embedded in it that you'll slide over your existing whip antenna and just shrink it down. And because just like the little RFID tag, we can enhance antennas. So, for example, that temperature test, if this was our wire antenna and we'd watch it heat up, if I just take and put a piece of tape, just to be the same diameter, or as the wire, I put it on the side there, the thing cools right back down. So the energy automatically couples over to our material and launches instead of running on the skin of the wire. It likes, and as what we've noticed too, also, we have a little tabletop antenna analyzer that if we take a piece of wires like 7 inches long, maybe 450 megahertz, you'll see the nice waveform and a hot spot at the tip. If we start to increase the frequency, the waveform gets all messed up as it comes off a resonance because it's not ringing anymore, it's all messed up. We do the same thing with our antenna. We'll see a nice waveform and we'll see it hot at the tip. As we increase the frequency, we just see the energy just leave sooner. And we can take X-Acto knife and cut it off and throw it away, and it's still happy, but it still have the same beautiful wave shape of field shape, but it just gets shorter. So when we look at it with a network analyzer, sometimes we don't have one dip at all. It wouldn't, if it was a wire, it wouldn't work at all, but it rocks. So we have like a sponge. It won't ring, like the wire will ring, it'll oscillate back and forth, and that's what you're trying to do when you tune it up. You're trying to get the energy to hit the end and automatically come back, and to get it to pump on that wire. Ours is just sort of like a sponge. It just goes and oozes off into space, and on the way back in, the signal has millions and millions of landing points where it can land and automatically couple on. So, these are all theories. We're still working on trying to get the math and everything to come up with that to support them, but these are our observations after thousands and thousands of experiments. So it's we had 2 iPhone 3s, and we took one apart and just used a piece of tape again, overlaid the internal antenna, put it back together, took it down to Las Vegas to a cell phone lab, and we said, can you tell us if these phones are at spec? After 3 hours, the guy come back and said, this one is exactly at specifications. This one, for some reason, is over 20 dB better. So we said thank you, gave him our $600 and went home. So anyway, any questions? Okay, we have one.
What do you want for spring camp?
I know.
What do you, this material?
Yes.
This sprayable material that you come up with.
Yes.
And obviously it's the key.
Yes. That is totally the key.
Do you have a name for it?
Right now we just call it our spray and antenna. Stuff.
Is it paintable with a brush and sprayable?
You can paint it with a brush, it's better if you spray it, because the thicker you put it, the more it becomes like a wire. If you paint coat after coat after coat, then now we don't have just a thin layer of capacitors like in one plane. We got a 3D thing, and we're becoming more, and we got the energy's all going every which way. Yeah. Okay, so right now we don't sell the paint yet, but we're working on making a product. Yes, sir.
Wonderful answer you had, but I have no idea what it was. What was the question?
Oh, the question was, how much does a can of paint cost, and and do we sell it? And if you can you paint it, or with a paintbrush, or is it better to spray it? And so my answer was, it's better to spray it a nice thin layer, because the multiple layers becomes more 3D and it acts more like a wire. We get the same performance as a piece of copper. Any other questions? Me. So. Oh yes, yeah. We SWR, yeah. It's 50 ohms. It's different. You may need to use a balance sometimes, if you want to make your radio happy. But it's still, whatever. It's happy.
When you make these strips,
Yes. Yes.
you very precisely have the dimension width-wise?
No.
Or is it tolerant?
It tolerates various widths. Yes. The wider we make it, the more broadband it is. We've had it on that hunk of concrete for 1.5 years, and it still works fine out in the weather.
How do you control the impedance?
How do we control the impedance? You can do the width, you can do the length, you can adjust it. If you're trying to get your 50 ohms, basically we just use a network analyzer, see where it is, and decide.
I meant, is the composition of the paint or a function of what you have the impedance, or
yeah, the width and the length does adjust. It does correspond, but we can operate down clear to like a 64th wavelength, and still be rocking. We don't need to be a quarter wavelength. We can actually put on a car windshield. We're just playing with it. We're rolling it down. The SWR is getting better. The performance is going up. We're cutting it off. Keep rolling down until we just had a little teeny speck left, about 1 inch long. We were operating at VHF. So, all right. Well, thank you guys.